Karen Jennings, Brazil, 2021.
Today's a little bit cool, but this is summer now, so most of the time it is quite warm and humid. It's the rainy season, which is quite different from my home, which is in South Africa, in Cape Town, where we normally have the rain in the winter. So I always find it quite strange to have the rain in the summertime, because the rain in the winter always made me want to stay in bed and eat pancakes. And it's not quite the same when you have rain in the summer. You can't really stay in bed and eat pancakes. I sort of forgot about it just recently, and then I suddenly thought about it this morning. I thought, wow, my novel was longlisted for the Booker Prize. What an extraordinary thing to have happened. Because I'm all the way here in Brazil, where it really, no one cares at all about it. And so I've been quite sheltered, but I will be, at the start of December, I'll be moving back home to Cape Town in South Africa. And then probably it will start to feel more real, because I will see people, I'll be engaging again with the literary community. And so I suppose it will become more of a reality than it's been able to be so far.
So, An Island was published in 2020, longlisted for the Booker Prize 2021, and a lot has happened since then. Would you like to take us through that?
Well, yes, a lot has happened. Actually, when you said An Island was published in 2020, I thought, my goodness, it's a lifetime ago. At that time, I was still living in Brazil, but I came back to South Africa right at the end of 2021, and I've been here ever since, and have no plans to go anywhere else ever again in my life. But one of the amazing things that came out of the Booker longlisting of An Island was the starting of the Island Prize, which is an annual competition for an unpublished novel by a debut writer from Africa or the diaspora. So someone who hasn't published a novel before, and as I said, an unpublished novel. And the reason for creating this opportunity, it's really not about prize money, and you'll see that the prize money is very low in comparison to other prizes, because a lot of other prizes, they'll give you prize money and you say, oh, I won the prize, but then what? We're really aiming at trying to mentor and nurture and guide and support writers as much as we can. So in terms of working on their manuscript, so giving them editorial advice, whether that's structural, whether it's, down to word choices, commas, just formatting in general, and then helping to put them in touch with agents and publishers, hoping to make the very unkind and depressing and just awful the awful time of trying to make it somehow into the literary scene, to make that a little bit easier. And we've had some really wonderful success so far. In the first year, Sarah Isaacs was the winner with her novel Glass Tower. She's South African, and that novel has been published in the UK and in South Africa and done very well in South Africa. It's currently longlisted for the South African Sunday Times Fiction Award. They haven't yet announced their shortlist, so I can't tell you if it will move on or not. I hope it does, fingers crossed. It deserves to. And then Hamza Kudri, who is an Algerian writer who was a finalist or a shortlisted writer in the first edition of the prize. His novel has also been published and he's done extraordinarily well. It's been published in the UK and South Africa and Nigeria and Algeria, and I think might also be going further into Arabic-speaking countries as well in an Arabic translation. He's been getting a lot of attention and I'm incredibly happy for him. He did so much research. The novel is set in Algeria during the time of French colonization, and so it tells the story of these dances, and there's a lot of twists and turns, and it's wonderful. And then last year's winner, Reem Ghaffar, who is Sudanese. She wrote an absolutely beautiful novel, A Mouthful of Salt, set in Sudan. And she was immediately picked up by a publisher, Saki Books. And people have just fallen in love with her writing. And she, all of them are great writers, and you just know that they're in it for the long haul. They will be bringing out more books. Then recently we announced the winner of this year's competition, and that is Simba, and I'm really sorry, I'm going to butcher this name now, Kunazezi from Zimbabwe, who's written a crime thriller called Freelance. And he is currently in discussions with a few agents. And there have been the runners-up that I have worked with, and Andile, who was a runner-up last year. I've continued to work with her, and her novel Braids and Migraines will be coming out in the UK and South Africa next year. And then I'm currently working with the two runners-up from this year, Ruby from Ghana and Mali from Zambia, and we are working on their manuscripts and getting them to a place where they can feel confident about showing them to agents or publishers.
And meanwhile, you'd also been writing.
Yes, I've been writing a lot. You know, if you are a single lady or single man, single anything, and have no children and no responsibilities in the way that other people have, you are able to fit in quite a lot more into your day. And because this year I have long COVID, so I can't go anywhere, I can't do anything. I'm basically housebound. Everything exhausts me. So I sit at my desk, I sit in my chair, I lie in my bed, I lie on the couch. So I've been reading quite a lot, but I also have been writing a lot. So at the start of the year, I completed a manuscript for a novel set in Cape Town in 1838. And I am working on a draft of a new novel now, set in Cape Town as well, but in the present. I'm also I've just completed a draft of I don't know what to call it. It's a story. It's based on fact. It's based on real people and real events in 1739 on the northern frontier of Cape Colony here in South Africa. And it's a mix of prose and poetry and documents and maps and quotes and all kinds of things. And then I've also written something like 16 short stories in the last 2 years, and some essays and academic papers. You know, this is basically all I do with my time.
You've recently been mentoring other writers with the Kane Prize in Malawi. Could you tell us a bit about the Kane Prize and how you got involved, and what made the biggest impression while you were there?
Yes, well, I was fortunate enough that they simply contacted me out of the blue and asked if I would be willing to participate in the workshop as a mentor. And so with two of us, myself and Femi Kaiwadi of Nigeria, we were mentoring 10 young writers from across Africa. There were 4 from Malawi, and then also from Nigeria, Lesotho, Kenya, Tanzania, and South Africa. And it was an incredible experience. Actually, just today, this morning, I had to write the introduction for the anthology that's being put together this 2 weeks that we had. And I start my introduction by quoting Chinua Achebe, who spoke about writing, whatever project you're working on, it's like a prison sentence for the time you spend on that project. And I was thinking about how it's not a bad prison sentence where you get sent to a lovely resort in Malawi, on Lake Malawi. You have staff can make your bed, they can bring you lunch, you just call them up and say, oh, can I have my laundry done? And please bring me some tea. Or whatever it is. You think it's an idyllic situation, but actually it is also incredibly stressful, because whenever you have to write anything, it's going to be stressful, because it's innate within us as writers that we are so full of self-doubt and a sense of perfectionism. We want it to be perfect. We want to try and convey a truth to the world, and to try and do it through these limited means, and the limited means that we only have words with which to do it. And once you're in a setting and you're told you have 10 days to complete this, it does make it very stressful. And of course there were some meltdowns and some tensions, but the other thing that's wonderful about a workshop is that you're able to go to the other writers and say, I'm having such a bad time, I'm having real difficulty with this, I'm got writer's block, or I'm just staring at this and it doesn't work. And they're able to give each other advice and support, or just sit together and have a slice of cake or gossip or a beer or something. And so that dreadful, horrific loneliness and isolation that is certainly a part of being a writer, but it doesn't have to be all of being a writer. That there are these opportunities, so that when Femi and I were mentoring individual writers, or when we were giving talks, or when we did the reading in the evenings when everyone got a chance to read from their work in progress and people could give feedback and help with encouraging and inspiring, or saying, if you feel this isn't working, why not try this other option? It's a wonderful thing, because it teaches you all the realities of being a writer. So the dreadful realities of, oh my God, there's a blank page in front of me and I have to fill it. But it also teaches you about deadlines and about writing under stressful conditions, which of course is going to happen in life, but all of this in a very supportive environment. And I think that it's one of the things that I really lacked in all my years, my married life in Brazil, was I didn't have that sense of community. I was in Brazil and all the South Africans were in South Africa. I didn't have my writing community in the same way. And, I guess I wasn't really connected with people in the same way through social media either. But now I'm very much more focused on the literature, the publishing, what's happening in Africa, and how to, this is idealistic, but how to get everyone in Africa a fair chance. A lot of people, they have this idea now that they have to do a master's in creative writing to be taken seriously, and it has to be done in America. But most people don't have money for that. You can't afford to go to America. And so I don't want anyone to feel that they are less than anyone else because they haven't got a master's degree. I don't want anyone to feel that because they're from Africa, that they don't belong on the Booker long list or the New York Times list. We have just as much right to be read by the rest of the world as everyone else. And that's one of my passion projects, is trying to help writers on my continent.
So is there anything you can tell us about your next novel?
What I can tell you is it was hell to write, as every single novel I've ever written has been hell to write. So that certainly hasn't changed for me. But it is set in Cape Town in 1838, at a time that very few people, even South Africans, know about, which is that when slavery came to an end, there was a period of sort of a pause before it was properly ended. So in South Africa, in 1834, slavery ended, but it was believed that slaves were unable to embrace independent society. They were too savage. They didn't know how to be civilized, and so they needed a period of training. So they were no longer called slaves, they were called apprentices. And for 4 years, they had to work as apprentices, which basically meant they were just slaves for another 4 years. And it was a very confusing time for them because, you're told you're free, but actually you're not. And there was quite a bit of rebellion and confusion and fear from the colonizers, expecting an uprising and murders and all kinds of things. And so my novel takes place in the final week before full emancipation, which happened on the 1st of December, 1838. So yeah, those last few days when the formerly enslaved were still apprentices. And it follows the story of 3 people. One is a British man who's come to the Cape, and he's got his finger in lots of pies and has a whole lot of businesses and entrepreneurial ideas and all things like that. And then the other character is his wife, who is very upset about being stuck in the colonies. And then the third character is a formerly enslaved woman who runs away from the place where she was working as an apprentice because she's really confused. She doesn't know, am I now going to be free or am I going to remain enslaved? So there's a lot of confusion around that.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that these apprenticeships were unpaid. Is that right?
Well, in some cases there might have been, a few coins, but in most cases not. It would have been, well, you get a jacket once a year and you get a floor to sleep on and you get food. So, you can't expect more than that.
So you also write flash fiction, and you're included in an anthology that's just been published by Caravan Press in South Africa. I think the name of the story is Panties. Is there anything you'd like to say about how that happened or the process, perhaps?
Sure. So I haven't written short stories for many, 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 many years. When I decided to start writing short stories last year, which is also part of my work that I do at Stellenbosch University with LEAP, which is the Laboratory for the Economics of Africa's Past. And so I was quite nervous when I had to start writing short stories because my mind was still thinking in novel or novella terms. So I had quite large ideas that were too big for a short story. But I forced myself to try, and what I realized is that the extraordinary thing about short stories is that they give you an opportunity to experiment in a way that you can't in a novel because of the time it takes. You know, if you're going to experiment, for example, with writing in the first person, to write a whole novel in the first person and then discover that actually it doesn't work, that's quite a lot of work to put in. But to experiment with a short story or a flash fiction of less than 1,000 words or less than 500 words, it's definitely not the same amount of effort, and you get to a point much earlier on of being able to realize, oh, this doesn't work or this does work. So that's something that I've been doing with the short stories, trying different styles and different ways of telling. And so when I saw a call for submissions for this anthology, I sat down and it really just flowed. The story, which is it's called Panties, and it's about a girl who doesn't wash her panties by hand, but it's what her grandmother did, and talking about the history of washing panties in their family. But what I found is that it was about 650 words when I was done, and it was really hard for me to whittle it down to 500 words. I think it's pretty much exactly on the dot 500 words, because it's hard to tell a full story, to create any kind of emotional connection or response from the reader in 500 words. It is difficult, and it is something that I do believe very strongly in, is that writers should always be practicing, doing exercises on how to use words to the best effect. So whether that's working with haiku, or I recently discovered a type of poetry called skinny poetry, which is poetry that has a regular format where most of the lines are only one word long and many of them repeated. So you have these limitations placed on you, but you still need to convey something real and powerful. And I think that's very good practice for any writer, and I would encourage them to try flash fiction, to try haiku or skinny poetry, anything like that.
The different publications of Crooked Seeds has meant about 5 or 6 different covers. Now, have you a favourite cover?
Well, I do have a favourite cover, but I let me just explain. So my taste is very different to most normal people. I'm attracted to very grim, dreary, grey kind of books. I mean, in terms of the feeling that they convey, and so I'm then therefore drawn to very grey, grim covers, and so so for me, I wanted like a grey or very, very faded cover. But of course, that is not the kind of thing that most people are drawn to. Most people are drawn to color and vibrancy, or something that stands out, not something that hides away. So I was told very early on that, you know, the things that I thought would make great covers were just too dismal. And so I stepped back from that process of being part of discussing the covers, because I thought, you know, I don't know about this stuff. It's not anything that I pretend to know about, and let the people whose job it is, let them work it out. And they were all wonderful, but because of my personal taste, it is the Indian cover from Picador, India, that is my favorite. It's a grey cover. It really, for me, conveys a sense of the drought, the thirst, the longing, and there is this this plant, the seed, And there is a sense there of connecting it with not only the title, but also with the contents of the book. So that for me is my favorite, but I don't blame anyone else if they have other favorites.
You'll be attending the Open Book Fest in Cape Town this year. What are you looking forward to most about it? Have you got any favourite places? Maybe the book lounge that you're looking forward to?
This is actually quite funny because I am a huge hermit. I have always been this way. I hate being around people. I hate going out. I hate people. I hate them. And so when it's something like open book, I think, oh no, it's going to be terrible. They're going to be people. I'm going to have to talk to them. And yet every single year I go and I have an amazing time. I remember last year it was just so wonderful seeing the writers talking up on the stage, answering the questions, being able to interact with them afterwards, have the audience interact with them. It's always it's such a heartwarming and heartening experience because as I have said, writing can be so lonely and you can think that you're just all on your own and no one else in the world understands or is going through what you're going through. But then you go to this and you see, yes, other people suffer, but also you hear about the good things. You see how people are making an impact and you see that people are reading. Because I think there's often that feeling from writers that no one is reading. But when you have a festival like this and you see how people are reading and how they're responding to books, that is really special.